Well, now we have the fortune of having Shri Rajeev Chandrasekhar ji, Honorable Minister of State, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, and Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. He will give the inaugural address as chief guest of this conclave, and we are all eager to hear from you, Sri Chandrasekhar ji. Over to you, Sri Chandrasekhar.
Good morning, and good morning from New Delhi. Thank you all for inviting me to this India Economic Conclave being organized by the Bengal Chamber. Certainly a good topic to talk about, especially in context of the recent G20 and what we are seeing around the world in the post-COVID situation or post-COVID world. Let me just start by drawing your attention in a sense, at least from my perspective, that we certainly seem to be living in very exciting times, very interesting times from a global perspective, exciting times from an Indian perspective. We have just finished. We are on the other side of this G20 conference, where the world's largest nations and their representatives came and saw India for the last 1 year and have recognized many things that India have put forward. And in a lot of ways, the New Delhi Declaration represents the stature, the global stature, the coming of age, in a way, of India on the global stage. So that backdrop, it's almost like if you look at the last 7-8 days of my own calendar, or indeed what you have read, you will see that almost every day there is history being made, milestones are being crossed. For the first time ever in the history of independent India, we have a new parliament. This is just a week, 10 days ago. Great moment to celebrate, great occasion to celebrate. And then, if that wasn't good enough, 2 days after, the parliament passes, the new parliament passes as its ever law enacted in that new parliament, an historical women's reservation bill that will absolutely transform the landscape of opportunities for women and young girls today, who are young girls today, who will be women tomorrow. And if that wasn't good enough, 2 days later, the iPhone 15 globally launched. Consumers go to their store in Sydney, New York, walk in and get iPhone 15s on the 22nd, and the same day, Indian consumers walk into and buy the same iPhone 15. The big difference being the Indian consumer got the made in India iPhone 15, and the consumers elsewhere got iPhone 15s from other parts of the manufactured in other parts of the country. If that wasn't good enough, 2 days post that, a $3 billion unit, first ever semiconductor plant, the groundbreaking ceremony for that was held in Gujarat, Sanand, Gujarat. And I lay these out for you because these are all things that have never been done in the 75 years of Indian history. We are charting almost every day new course, reimagining our ambitions today. And who would have thought, and amongst all of you, there are many, many businessmen. Who would have thought a country in 2014 that was importing 82% of its mobile phones, had no electronics manufacturing of any kind, today is manufacturing 100% of what we consume and is exporting 1 lakh crores last year of Apple and Samsung phones made in India. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that 75 years of not having pursued the semiconductor opportunity, here we are today, just 15 months later, seeing almost 30 startups in design, semiconductor device design, a $3 billion Micron, a global giant, setting up a memory plant in Gujarat. And the curriculum to generate 85,000 highly skilled, highly talented, global standard talented engineers and scientists being implemented in our Indian academics. And now all of this is happening at a time when India is the fastest growing economy in the world. We have moved from being, just in 2013, if you recall, many of you will recall, we were the fragile five. And here we are the top five economies of the world. And as our Prime Minister has said, he has guaranteed that we will move from the top five to the top three in the next 3 years. We will cross Japan and Germany, and we will be in the league with the US and China amongst the top three economies in the world. We have resources today that are being generated for the government, and you can see the GST numbers year on year to show that how the economic growth is not just a statistic, it is creating more and more resources for the government to invest in infrastructure, in poverty, in the poor of India, to make them move out of poverty, giving them more and more opportunities, etc., etc. This is how I like to start any discussion, any conversation about India today and what India will be going forward. And as we speak to the today and as we speak to the tomorrow, it is extremely important to just a backdrop and an understanding of where India used to be. And I like to share this example, like to share this especially with the younger Indians who certainly have not experienced the past of India, the old India. That, India for many decades, almost six and a half decades, was seen as this great country, largest democracy in the world, great people with great potential, but always a country of great potential that was limited by a dysfunctional governance, leaky governance, which was best characterized by what Rajiv Gandhi said, the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi said in 1985, that for every 100 rupees that left Delhi from the government of India, 15 rupees alone reached for the benefit of the citizen that 100 rupees was intended to. That statement described the dysfunctionality, the leakage, the corruption, the intermediation between government and citizen, and in a lot of ways described what the world saw of democracies like India and democracies at large. And you are in Bengal, you are in Kolkata, you will certainly agree with me that for a number was an ideology that was exported from the north of India, from a country called China, that actually put out there for people that democracies in Asia will never function, that it required authoritarian regimes and ideologies like communism and Marxism for development to reach the people of Asia. This was actually put out there for many years and decades. And in 2015, our Prime Minister came, transformed that narrative, using technology, created DBT, created Jan Dhan Yojana, used technology to ensure that every 100 rupees that now goes from the government of India reaches the citizen in his or her bank account without leakage, without any delay, and without any intermediation. And in a snap, that narrative of a dysfunctional governance has been replaced by a technology-led digital government that has brought more and more trust, more and more transparency, and less corruption in the process of governance and the relationship between government and citizen. It used to be that India was seen as a country with limited resources. बहुत poor country hai. We talk about modern infrastructure in Singapore, in Thailand, in Korea, and the narrative from India would be that we just didn't have the resources to build modern cities, to build modern infrastructure, and India would always lag. And here we are today, one of the largest spending nations in the world in building modern infrastructure, from rail to roads to ports to logistics networks. And we are spending 13 lakh crores in this financial year in creating modern infrastructure. Resources were always low this year. And today, when we look at tax buoyancy, GST buoyancy, every year we are exceeding targets by 20-25%. Shows you the power of the underlying economy to generate resources that can be deployed for infrastructure, deployed for our poor, to get them out of poverty, for our own security, a country that had to go running to the west every time there was a terrorist strike, had to go running to the west every time countries in the north or the west encroached on our territory, today has invested under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, because of the resources that are generated due to an expanding economy, in a modern security apparatus, which is not just an academic conversation for those of us in business and governance, because our economic rise, our economic growth, our rise as a global superpower will certainly not be without obstacles or without challenges. And the biggest insurance policy to assure our rise, assure our growth, and assure our future ambitions is that we have a strong and deterrent security establishment and capability. It used to be that poverty was a slogan and that people had made these efforts in essentially talking about poverty, garibi hatao, all of that. And for the first time, because of our resources, 130 million Indians, 13 crore Indians have been brought out of poverty in the last 6 years alone, as the Niti Aayog has reported. The World Bank recently talked about inclusion and how over the last 9 years, we have achieved in India bringing more Indians into the inclusive banking and financial sector net, which would have otherwise taken 47 years if we had gone by the pace in pre-2014. So I'm laying all this out there because I certainly think when we are talking about, and your topic today is the Indian Economic Conclave, there is certainly a reason for us to be extremely positive, ambitious, and optimistic about where the future and what the future has in store for India and Indian businesses and the Indian economy in general. There are many things that I can talk to you about the past versus the present, but you certainly get the gist of what I'm saying, the deep transformation that has happened over the last 9 years that has provided an enabling framework for today's growth and future growth. And certainly one of the big elements that I would like to draw your attention to, if you don't know about this already, but it's certainly worth understanding and celebrating, is the role in our economy of younger and younger startups and the amount of equity that has been created in the last 7 to 9 years, investable equity that has been created in our economy, in our country, has been unprecedented. In the past, when we looked at an economic model, the major players of the economic model would be the government and the public and the state, both the public sector and the state, and of course, a handful of Indian corporates, some of them very large, heavily diversified, with a very small economic space available for young first generation entrepreneurs and startups. So in that old model, the small remained small, the big grew bigger. And if a small company or a small startup or a young person wanted to set up a business in the early 90s, it was extremely important, regardless of whether you had a brilliant idea or a great amount of energy and perseverance, to have access to capital and to have access to the other opportunities. And today, there is an absolutely very different economic model that is being built out and growing today, where a large part of the economic activity and the GDP is being contributed by and created by, the economic value add is being contributed by and created by young startups and young entrepreneurs who today, for the first time, don't see any limits to their ambitions, don't see any limits to their growth. Today, the small need not remain small. If you have everything else, the grit, the idea, the innovation, the business strategy, and the big, certainly in today's world, there is no guarantee or insurance that they will remain big and have the too big to fail model applied to them. So it is certainly a very important change in how our economy is being made up. I have, over the last 2 years, had the good fortune to travel to 62 colleges around the country. None of the IITs and none of the big colleges, but all of the many other colleges, government, district colleges, And I can report to you with all responsibility in my command that the energy, the determination, the confidence that the younger generation of graduating students are bringing to bear is just unimaginable and extremely inspiring. And I think, given that, we can be extremely confident that the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister's assurance and guarantee that we will be the third largest economy in the coming years is absolutely uh, achievable, and we will get there soon target as a nation. So there is many things to talk to you about. I certainly don't want to take up all the time, but I will end by saying that especially in the two areas that I am personally responsible for, technology and in skilling and entrepreneurship, both of them intersect at the heart of the principal stakeholder, which is the young Indian. I find it extremely positive and inspiring today, the way young Indians are responding to the increased number of opportunities that the government and Prime Minister has thrown up. Today, like I said, like telling people in 2014, when we referred to the digital economy, we referred to IT and ITES. We were the back office of the world. We had very good companies like Tata, TCS, Wipro, Infosys, etc., who had built world-class franchises. But in a very clear way, we occupied a very thin slice of the digital economy. We were at about 4.5% of GDP when it came to digital economy, and today we are 11%, and by 2026 will be 20% of the GDP will be digital economy. And I want to tell you very clearly today, there is no space, no aspect of the digital economy that India is not present in today. IT, ITES, the internet and the consumer internet, artificial intelligence, electronics, semiconductor, high performance computing, AI. We are in every part of the current digital economy and the emerging digital economy. So it is an absolutely wonderful thing to see how the energies that have been unleashed by our Prime Minister in 2015 when he launched the Digital India program is really now creating and transforming the very nature of our economy and creating more and more opportunities and more economic opportunities for the country and for the young Indians who are practitioners in this. Skilling, I'll quickly give you a quick brief on skilling. It is certainly clear to all those in business for sure that post-COVID, the digitization of the world, digitization of the economy has accelerated significantly. And in 2014, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, that the total workforce in India was 42 crore Indians, and 31 crore Indians in the Indian workforce in 2014 had no skills or education. That was the legacy after 65 years, that bulk, 3 out of 4 Indians who had a job, who worked, had no skills or no education. And that is the process that we have attempted to change. We are delivering skills at scale, at large numbers of skills, job ready, future ready skills. And the other aspect of 2014 used to be that 1.5 crore youngsters dropped out of school and joined the workforce without skills, for which the government has launched the national education policy in 2020. Some states, unfortunately, don't want to implement that, but the national education policy ensures that no child who drops out of school or leaves school does so without having formal skilling training. From the 6th standard in the national education policy, children have vocational training and skilling as part of the curriculum. And so that 1.5 crore children who used to join the workforce without skills has come down to 0 for every state that is implementing the national education policy. So skilling is absolutely a very, as you certainly will understand and acknowledge, is an absolutely critical area as far as young Indians are concerned, in making them more and more relevant and more available to the large number of opportunities that are being thrown up due to the various policies of the government of India. So I will stop here. I wish the Bengal Chamber and all of its members the very best. I thank you again for inviting me to speak and contribute in my small manner to these conversations that you are having in Kolkata today. And I wish you the very best. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandrasekhar, for mentioning some of the very key points which are important, apart from mentioning the milestones which has been achieved in last few weeks or days, so to say. You correctly pointed out that with the dysfunctional governments or governance, a country cannot progress. And for that, we need a good governance, and that will produce